Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for yet another week of Be Cyber Smart, where we are learning about how to actually be cyber smart. It is Cyber Security Awareness Month for those who are not aware. And we have been holding a sequence of events during this month. And just to recap, we started with the launch of the month, and we went ahead to talk about cybersecurity and how you can start with the basics. Then last week we were discovering how to fight the fish, and this week we have Patricia Musomba, our trainer, who is going to be taking us about how to make security a priority, that is cybersecurity first. Patricia Musomba is a cybersecurity trainer here at eKRAAL, and she has been training the Cisco, or rather she's part of the all-female-led Cisco team here at eKRAAL. And without further ado, Patricia, karibu sana.
Right, good morning, everyone. I'm really excited to be here today to take you through cybersecurity first. However, before I begin, I would like to do a short presentation on what we do at Cisco and apprise you on some of the courses that we do offer at the Cisco eKRAAL Academy. So let me just briefly share my screen. Right, so at eKRAAL Cisco Academy, we have existed for the last, let me say 2 years. This is our second year in operation. And we offer various learning paths for anyone who is interested in networking. So we have 5 learning paths that someone can take up as they gain more skills. So the first and a very big part of who we are is networking. So this is a learning path where you learn all things networking fundamentals, essentials, and this is where CCNA falls. And then we have programmable infrastructure. This is for automation and some programming languages, as well as IoT. And then we have a learning path on cybersecurity, where you learn to secure and to defend networks against cyber attacks. Then we have OS and IT. You get essential skills in IT as well as in various operating systems. And then we have programming, where we have courses in Python, in C, and in C++. And in all these 5 learning paths, at the academy is highly practical. So we make sure that you use interactive tools to ensure that you retain as much knowledge as possible. So I'll just briefly touch on some of the courses that are in these 5 learning paths. And if you are interested, reach out to us for enrollment purposes. So under networking, we have introduction to Packet Tracer. This is a simulation tool where most of the labs for networking are done. So it's a very important course for you to learn about how important this tool can be used to simulate real networks and to simulate large networks and enable you to learn. And then we have CCNA version 7, which consists of 3 courses. That is Introduction to Networking, CCNA. Then under operating systems and IT, we have IT Essentials, we have Get Connected, and then we have 2 Linux courses. For cybersecurity, we have Introduction to Cybersecurity, we have Cybersecurity Essentials, and we are launching Cybersecurity Operations in November or early December. So be on the lookout for this. And then we have the Programming Essentials in Python. That is one of our most taken courses, but we do have C and C++. Lastly, under IoT, we have Introduction to IoT. So for all these courses, we have some that are free and others that are paid for. So for the paid for courses, we have CCNA version 7 and Cyber Operations. These are the two courses that you can do a certification exam and be certified in. The certification will last 3 years after you have passed your certification exam. So those are the two paid courses that we offer. And the rest of the courses that I've mentioned here are all free. Therefore, if you are interested in starting your learning journey, you can definitely reach out to us, and we'll be able to enroll you to any of these courses. So who is our target market as eKRAAL Cisco Academy? So for us, we are looking for individuals who are just looking to start a career in networking or in IT, because networking is one of the main foundations of a successful career in technology. You need to understand how networks are created, and then you will be able to protect them or even create applications that will be used in the network. Then we're also looking at IT, computer science, and telecommunication students. So students in the technology field would really benefit from the courses that we are offering. And we also have IT professionals who are looking to upskill and develop more skills to progress their career, or just to learn more, really. And then lastly, we have career changes. So if you are in a different career and you are willing to transition to a career in tech, the Cisco Academy would be really great for you. So if you are interested, you can reach us via our email, which is cisco@ekraal.com. You can just send us an email and we'll respond promptly. And you can also reach out us through the eKRAAL website, which is ekraal.org. We are also present in most social media sites, so you can also reach us via those sites. So now let's jump into the presentation for the Cybersecurity Awareness Month, where we're talking about cyber security first.
She's getting ready, guys. A bit of housekeeping in case you have any questions, please raise them in the chat. You can raise your hand. And if you feel that, I mean, there are the reactions, emoji reactions there, so you can also chat us through those ones. Back to you, Patricia. We seem to have lost Patricia. You know, with these things, we can always expect some technical hitches. So let's just give her a few minutes and for her to join the meeting.
All right, let me quickly change my network. All right, can you hear me, Shay?
Loud and clear, Patricia.
All right, so I apologize for that. Right, so the main theme for today is cybersecurity first, and the reasoning behind it is for you to always bear cybersecurity in mind in everything that you do when you're accessing the internet when you're buying your devices, to always make sure that you are considering the safety of your actions as well as the safety of the devices that you are using. So that is the theme that will be underlying the entire presentation today. All right, so we're going to look at some of the cybersecurity trends that are impacting how we respond, or even the cyber attacks that we encounter. And then after the cybersecurity trends, we'll look at device security. After that, we'll look at cybersecurity at home as well as at work. So let's begin. So for the cybersecurity trends, why we need to look at them is because emerging technologies or cyber attacks are always changing, and the way we respond online will change the attacks that we face. It will also change how we respond and how we prepare ourselves to ensure that we are cyber secure. And so we are going to look at some of the trends and how we can respond to any changes that happen in the cyberspace. So the first trend is, of course, remote working or teleworking. So in 2020, due to COVID, most organizations transitioned to remote working or working from home. This was mainly because we went on to lockdown, and so that ensured that we were not able to actually go to physically to work, and therefore work must continue. So we transitioned to remote working, and this exposed both us as well as our organizations to new attacks and new attack vectors, because now we were using our own devices to access company resources so that we ensure that we have all that we need to perform our duties well. And with COVID also came COVID-centered attacks. For example, we had a lot of phishing emails that were COVID-related, where, for example, attackers would create sites where you're able to get, let's say, information about COVID, and yet they would use it to collect data about you. For example, I do remember there was one where the government of Kenya had issued that they would support families through COVID, and some attackers created a site, a phishing site, I believe, where they you would input your details for you to receive aid or to report whether you have received aid. And this was one of the ways that attackers can use to get information about you. So there were a lot of, because of COVID, we saw an increase in COVID-related phishing scams, as well as misinformation, which is still a risk while you're online. The other trend is we are moving slowly but surely towards a digital economy. We are seeing an increase in online shopping. A lot of us are now able to shop via websites, to shop even via social media, and even deliveries be done to our doorstep. And so this is something that is absolutely amazing and so convenient and flexible. However, it does come with its own set of challenges when it comes to security. The other thing, we're seeing an increase in marketing, which is done online. Gone are the days where marketing was only done through billboards or ads on the newspaper. Now, a lot of the times it is done on social media sites and various websites. We're also seeing an increase in mobile and internet banking, as well as the increased use of social media. And this creates a lot of risk, especially with financial fraud, especially on mobile and internet banking. So it's important to have security in mind when you're using some of these things and when you're interacting with some of these trends, to ensure that you do not lose money and you also do not expose yourself to unnecessary risk. The last trend I'm going to talk about is bring your own device, where now organizations do allow employees to use their own resources, let's say their laptop, or to even use their mobile phone to access company resources, which yes, increases convenience and flexibility for the employees. However, it does also add a bit of risk, because if the employees do not take security seriously, then you're adding another vulnerability into the network. So these are the three trends that I would like to talk about today. There are others, but these are the three that will inform our presentation for today. So for all these three trends, one thing is underlying, and that is our devices. We use our devices to work remotely. We use our devices to access and be a part of the digital economy. And we use our own devices to ensure that we can access company resources. Therefore, it's important to learn about device security, which is going to be the next section of our presentation. So when we talk about devices, we're talking about portable and even desktops that we do use to access a network or even the internet. So for example, we're talking about endpoints in this particular case. So we're talking about desktops, we're talking about laptops, we're talking about mobile phones, tablets, all these types of devices that we do use as employees or even just as people interacting on the internet. We use them to access resources on the internet. So we're going to talk about how to secure these devices and how to always have security in mind while we're using these devices. So the first guideline on device security is authentication. And authentication is to ensure that the people who access our devices are authorized to do so. And the way to do that is for them to present something that they know, or something that they have, or something that they are, to ensure that we can verify that it is them. So this could be in terms of passwords or PINs or biometrics. So for example, on your mobile phone, it's important to ensure that authentication protocols are enabled. For example, please ensure you have a password on your mobile device, coupled with, you could have biometrics, that is, you could have a fingerprint, you could have a face ID, whichever it is, ensure that it is enabled. However, not all authentication is created equal. So for me, I do prefer passwords to PINs, because PINs most of the times are shorter and they are easier to guess, as opposed to passwords, which when you follow the password guidelines, then it is harder for someone to guess your password. Ensure that if you do have biometric features, then ensure that you have enabled them. This is something that you should consider when you're buying devices. For example, if you're buying a laptop and you have an option of buying one with a fingerprint scanner, it could provide you a better authentication. So this is something to consider when you're purchasing devices. So when you're creating these passwords, it's important to follow password guidelines. And this is particularly important to ensure that you're also not creating very easy and guessable passwords. So your passwords need to be long enough. They also need to be a mix of alphanumerics. So ensure that it's a mix of letters and special characters and numbers, just to make it a little bit harder to guess your password. The next guideline is on applications. And here we need to be using legitimate applications. And legitimate applications are applications that are from the official providers of that particular application. For example, when we're looking at mobile devices, we can download most of the legitimate applications on the Play stores of our operating system. For For example, if you're using Android, you can have legitimate apps from the Google Play Store. However, it's still important to vet them and do your own research a bit about the application just before installing it, just to see whether it has any reported malicious functionality. When we're looking at computers, it's important to also use legitimate applications. A lot of us are notorious for using cracked applications because we do not want to pay. However, we do know that if it's free, chances are you are the product. So ensure that for your most used and most important applications, pay for them or find alternative open source ones that you can use. You can use. This is because these cracked applications can have malicious intent, and like the third parties could be collecting information about you, or they could even find ways of installing malware onto your devices. So avoid and avoid and avoid. The other thing about applications is to always review the permissions that you're giving to these applications while installing them. If some of the resources or permissions that an application is asking for is not needed in the correct functionality of that application, then it should not be granted. For example, if an application is asking for, let's say, contact information, and contact information is really not needed for the proper functionality of this application, you can proceed to deny such permissions. Next, we have remote wiping. So when you're buying devices, it's important to look for whether features such as remote wiping and Find My Device are provided for, so that in case of loss of the device, you're able to delete data remotely, and this limits your exposure, and it also limits how much data you lose when you lose your device. Particularly on this, ensure that you've backed up your data and you've encrypted it. This will, again, minimize data loss, so it will prevent loss of data. And most of the times we advise you to back up data that is very important and very sensitive, to make sure that in case of your device is lost, you do not lose all the data that was stored in the device. Then we have features. And on features, we have disabled features when they're not in use. These are features such as location, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi. This is because when all these features are enabled, they do increase your risk surface. And so if they're not in use, then you should disable them. Next, we have updates. This is something that we sing all along: updates, updates, and updates. You should keep a clean device. And by a clean device, we mean that all the applications that are in the device should be kept up to date. This includes the operating system, all the applications, also the browsers that you're using. This is because most updates will contain security updates where the official provider of the application will be patching some of the security vulnerabilities. And when you do not update, it means that you remain exposed and attackers can use these vulnerabilities against you. Lastly, on device security, we have antivirus. So ensure you have an antivirus installed, especially for laptops and desktops. This will protect you against malware. These are any malicious software that you have installed either knowingly or unknowingly. So this will protect you against that. There are third-party applications that you can use for antivirus. However, some operating systems come with inbuilt antivirus protection. For example, if you are using a Windows operating system, then you have the Windows Defender at your disposal that is as good as any other third party that you can use against malware. Then on this, please be aware of any links, especially unsolicited links that are sent to you. They could be malicious links that direct you to malicious sites, or they could lead to you downloading malware into your devices. This was spoken at length during week 2, where we were talking about Fight the Phish. So I'll not go in depth into it. So now we're going to look at cybersecurity at home. So this will be protecting your home network and ensuring the setup at home is protected, not just when you're at work. At least your IT department takes care of cybersecurity, but at work it is your sole responsibility. At home, sorry, it is your responsibility to ensure security. So your home network most of the times will consist of a router, and this router will be acting as a router, and it can also be a switch. So as the router, it makes the forwarding decisions. It makes the decisions on where to forward your traffic. Are you trying to connect to Google? It will forward that traffic to the correct servers. So that is the router takes care of that. And it also does act as a switch. If you do look at your home router, you'll see that it has a couple of ports that can be used for wired connection. So in your home network, you can have wireless and you can have wired connection. So wired connection is where you're using your LAN cable to connect directly to the router, or if you're connecting wirelessly, then you're the wireless client, and now you're connecting to the router for you to have access to the internet. So this is mostly usually the setup at home. So how do you ensure that you secure your home network? The first thing is to change the default router credentials. So the router credentials will allow you to log into the router and to make configuration changes. Therefore, it's important for you to change these default credentials so that not just anyone has access to your router. So the default credentials most of the times will be found at the back of the router. So once you log in for the first time, you should change those credentials. And then once you have changed those credentials and you've logged into the router, you should ensure that you have WPA2 or 3 encryption protocol that is enabled. So we have various encryption protocols for wireless communication. We used to have WEP, and we have WPA2, and we also have 3. WEP is an insecure protocol and it's easily cracked. Therefore, you should make sure that is not enabled on your router. So ensure you're using either 2 or 3. 3 is the newest protocol, and it is mostly available for more modern devices. So not all of them will have WPA3. So as of now, most devices are using WPA2. So this is what will be used to encrypt your traffic between your device and the router and the communication in between. Third, we should always use strong passwords for your Wi-Fi network, so that you do not have unauthorized people connecting to your Wi-Fi and utilizing your Wi-Fi resources. So ensure you're using strong passwords. We've already talked about password guidelines, so please ensure you follow those. It is advisable to also keep changing your Wi-Fi password every now and then. Then you should turn on the router firewall. Most routers will come with an inbuilt firewall, and you should ensure that this is turned on to make sure that the router filters traffic between you and the internet. So it will filter traffic to block any malicious traffic. Then next we have, you should separate the network for IoT devices. So if you have, let's say, a smart TV, you have, let's say, a smart fridge, and any other IoT devices in the home, it's important to create a separate network so that your network is segmented for IoT devices. This is because most IoT devices are vulnerable, and they do not have most times they do not receive updates as they should, and therefore they could compromise your network if they're connected directly to every other, to the network, to your home network. So ensure that you segregate this and you separate the network for IoT devices. Next, you should update the router firmware. So when you are buying a router, it comes installed with already a firmware, and most of the times this firmware is updated from time to time. So it's important to check whether your router allows for automatic router firmware updates. So ensure that when you're buying one, you check for some of these things. If it does allow automatic updates, you should ensure that that is selected when you're configuring your router. Next, you should always turn off the router while you are away. So if you're leaving for an extended period of time and the network is not in use, it's always advisable for you to turn it off. Lastly, you should follow device security guidelines that we have spoken about just in the second segment of this presentation. This is because your devices are a part of the network. Just because you have secured the router, you've enabled the firewall, encryption is enabled, doesn't mean now your devices are protected. It means that since they are a part of the network, if they do have any inherent vulnerabilities in them, you're compromising the security of your network. So ensure that you follow the device security guidelines that we have talked about. So now let's talk about cybersecurity at work. So the IT department has already taken care of the configuration of the network and everything else. So how are we supposed to conduct ourselves while using company resources to ensure that we do not add security vulnerabilities to our company's network? Again, we have sung this for the last 3 weeks and we'll continue singing it again. Password security is important. Ensure that you're using strong passwords, and a lot of workers or a lot of employees are very notorious for sharing passwords. For example, maybe you are away doing something or you're away from your workspace and you need something done, but you're not able to do it. What do most people do? They will call their colleague and they will share their password. And after the colleague has done whatever it is they requested to be done, then they do not share the password. They do not change the password. So this means that your colleague now has access to the password. And for example, if you are also a victim of using the same password for other applications or accounts, then that means that you are compromising the security of other accounts that you have used the very same password for. So please avoid sharing passwords and also avoid reusing passwords. Then it's advisable for you to use passphrases as passwords. It's easier to remember and they're stronger, and it will be harder for them to be guessed. Again, please use password managers to ensure that the password security guidelines are followed. Next, you should always keep a clean desk. This will prevent you from exposing company information or even your passwords. A lot of people like to write down some of these things and put on their desk, and this could compromise data security because anyone who passes by your desk can see the things that you have written there. And so you can compromise the security of the information that you as the employee are privy to. Next, you should separate work and personal. Whenever possible, you should ensure that you have different devices for work purposes and for personal purposes. This minimizes risk transfer between work and your personal stuff. So whenever possible, please use that. If it's not possible, you could also create different accounts on your machines to ensure that you have separated one account for personal stuff, and then you have another account for specifically work purposes. Then please, you should follow your company's bring your own device policy. And this is something that a lot of organizations fail to draft. So if you are in the IT department here and you do not have a bring your own device policy, you should consider drafting one and letting your employees know about it so that they are able to follow those guidelines and you can minimize your risks. Then we have data security, where we encourage you to have encryption enabled. We also consider the file permissions when you're sharing data to ensure that you maintain the confidentiality and integrity of data as you're sharing it. Lastly, on data security, please protect your personally identifiable information. This is because PII can really be used to target you. Attackers can collect this information about you and be able to personalize attacks, and it will be more trustworthy because they know things about you that you thought people did not know. So to avoid falling prey to, let's say, phishing scams, you should protect your personally identifiable information. For example, when you're sharing things online, avoid sharing your workspaces, avoid sharing your badge, avoid sharing too much information really about your work, because this information can easily be used to target you. Then you should follow the working from home guidelines. When we moved to working from home, I'm sure most organizations communicated how you should connect the company policy to the company resources, and how you can protect yourself against attacks while you're working from home. So this can also include the use of VPNs, because most of the times we are connecting via the internet. Therefore, we need to have an encrypted secure channel while still on the internet. So ensure that you do use VPNs. Again, you should separate work and personal, so have your separate devices. And then you should follow the remote access policy. Again, you should find out whether your organization has the remote access policy to ensure that you do follow the guidelines there. And lastly on this, since a lot of working from home includes webinars and includes meetings that are most of the times held via video conferencing platforms such as Zoom, Google Meet, and Microsoft Teams, it is important for you to ensure that these applications are secured. And some of the ways that you can ensure that they are secured would be to use the latest version, to ensure that if you are setting up if you're the one setting up the meeting, ensure that there's a waiting room, that you lock the meeting after some time. This is to ensure that not just anyone can join in on your meeting. For example, as you've seen on this one, there was a waiting room where the host had to let you in before you were able to join. Lastly, you should have a webcam cover, so that when you're not using your webcam, then you can cover it. But then during your meetings, you're able to enable your video on. And lastly on this, you should report. A lot of us have fear of reporting to the IT department. So we let attacks linger. We let attacks stay on for too long before they are reported to the IT department. So should you be compromised in any way, you've clicked on a link and your machine is now acting up, you should really report it to the IT department, because it's they're going to help minimize the impact of that attack. And it will also prompt them to educate and train more on cybersecurity. So you will be doing the organization a lot of service. So thank you very much for joining us. And if you do have any questions, you can use the chat, and I will now hand over the program back to Shay.
Thank you so much, Patricia, for such an insightful session. This is definitely in this era of being online and being digital, this is definitely information that we can take advantage of and practice even at home with our parents and family. So last week, I mentioned that there are some events that we are taking part in or partnering with some of the communities that we have here at eKRAAL. And one of them is SheHacks, where they are hosting the Hackfest 2021, and you can follow them on their platforms. Their sessions are happening every Thursday from 7 p.m. So that is definitely something that we can join. Other than that, next week we're going to be having a sequence of events happening around cybersecurity career awareness. So definitely look out for that. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe, and you're definitely going to get those notifications and of events and announcements that we are going to be making. Again, thank you, Patricia, for teaching us how to make security a priority. And this goes also for businesses, how to build security into products, whether it's for organizations, training, changing of passwords. I mean, so many, so much information that has been shared even over the last couple of weeks. Thank you so much for everyone who's showed up, and definitely cybersecurity should not be an afterthought. See you next week.